offered to go to the Komsomolets as a senior mechanic. I categorically refused. I declared that till the last days of my life I would be on my native ship, where I had plenty of grief and joys, and there was nothing more dear to me in the sea-hard service. Commando's barrel firing of 37mm shells began. When a barrel for 37mm shell is inserted into a large caliber barrel, both gunner's lock and loader work. A 25-30 square meter shield is towed at a distance of 10-12 cable meters. Zero is the number of hits, so pair by pair we fired. Romanovsky and Gorev shot best of all. One day, they announce, tomorrow in Koporskaya Bay, according to the plan of the exercise, the gunboat should land a landing party, and the cadets were going to the landing party. I was appointed foreman of one of the two ships rowing boats. Early morning. Calm. Soon we'll go to disembark the landing party. I stood on the bollard to check once again how everything is fixed in the boat that was dumped overboard, and suddenly, I'm lying on the upper deck. I don't understand a thing. The ship keeps moving. From the bridge comes the voice of CO Karp. Emergency alarm. The gunboat slows down and then stops altogether. We are temporary people on the ship, so for all the alarms we have one place on the upper deck on the starboard side, in the area of the chimney cowling. With astonishing speed for his age, the senior mechanic dives into one compartment, then into another. Here he gets out of the boiler room with extraordinary agility and hides in the engine room. We trim on the bow is increasing. Overboard, the water seems to be closer to the upper deck. Emergency party to start the patch. Half of the cadets on the patch. Commands Karp. Everyone works without fuss, silently and quickly. In the area of the bow below, we can hear the blows of sledgehammers. It means that they are putting up supports or emergency shields. In our opinion, the emergency drill is going smoothly. The mechanic said something softly to Karpov, and he commanded. All cadets portable hand pumps down into the big cockpit. Karpov's voice seemed a little anxious. Not without difficulty, we lower the pumps into the cockpit. But what is it? The cabin is full of water, almost up to our knees. Training, understandable. But why let so much water into the cockpit? I don't ask. With the help of bilge men, we quickly put pumps into action. Tidal hoses were stretched to the upper deck through the entrance hatch. 4 men at a time on the swings. Work as hard as we can in 3 shifts. The rest of you pump out water with buckets along the chain. Karpov commands. We're working at a furious pace. We don't have enough spirit for more than 5 or even 3 minutes. The XO appeared in the cabin from somewhere. He looked around all the corners, made some calculation. Well done, boys. Things are going well. I ask you not to slow down. You can increase the pace as much as you can, but you can't decrease it in any case. We're working tirelessly. There's half as much water in the cockpit. A little slower, it's coming from somewhere again. Push again. We feel the ship is slowly moving forward. From above, the guys pass. We are heading for Kronstadt. For several passes, we are working on pumping out water, and inside the ship emergency parties are working, announcing it with the sounds of sledgehammers. There is no nervousness anywhere. The tone of everything is set by the omnipresent chief mechanic and the even when tugboats approached the ship at the approach to Kronstadt, and one of them, moored at the side, began to pump out water with its dewatering equipment. When the water left the cabin and the hand pumps stopped working, we still thought that an emergency drill was going on. And only when the ship was urgently put into the dock, and we saw the size of damage from landing on the Sugarhead, not marked on the map, we realized in what a difficult situation it was, and that the biggest disaster did not happen to it only thanks to the senior mechanic, who knew his ship perfectly, to the last screw and rivet, thanks to disposition, cool endurance of the command staff and excellent training of the crew. We learned a hard but necessary lesson. We realized how to know our home ship, how to fight for its survivability, and how to behave in a critical situation. That was the end of our artillery practice on the Red Banner. But we learned what dock work is, cleaning the underwater part of the ship with iron brushes to a metallic shine. After the Red Banner navigational practice was held on shore in Peterhof, the same Alexeyev and the invariable Nikanor Ignatievich Shuraninov taught us wisdom and wisdom. We were mainly engaged in coastal astronomical observations with the help of artificial horizon, dinghy measurement, got initial skills necessary for everyone in surveying the coastline. And soon our group moved to Kronstadt to practice mine, subversion, and torpedo weapons. On a small Under the guidance of the coryphees of mine work Kitkin and Tepin, we actually, as it should be in the mine party, prepared mines for staging, put them, as they do on warships, and then choose. It was not an easy job. Each mine clinging to the ground with the legs of the mine anchor had to be pulled up to the side of the ship and lifted together with the anchor, min-rep wiped thoroughly, lubricated with thick, like tavot, oil winded at a strictly defined tension on the wind. We were soaked in oil and mud from nose to toe. Maybe that's why there were no special hunters among our group to mine. But all were conquered by torpedo weapons, huge bright workshops. They work on the devices of torpedoes in the cleanest robes. Machines so fine-tuned that they tick like a good clock. The torpedo is a clever creature. There's a lot of them slumbering in the racks, each waiting for its time. Torpedoes and their carriers, this is our aspiration, our vocation, so thought many ill. After assigning from us platoon and squad leaders to junior courses, all of us, already third-year students, were easily accommodated in the former church on the third floor, above the front entrance, and so we became the senior course. It was the last year in the walls of the school. The classes in astronomy, navigational laying continued. Deviation was added to the navigational sciences. The main emphasis was on the rules of artillery and torpedo firing, in addition to classes on Marxism-Leninism. A short course on the principles of organizing party political work was read. For the first deviation class, we went to the deviation room. In the right half of the room there were tables, stools, a huge blackboard. Everything is made of light birch. Above the blackboard is the motto, "A good navigator and a bad instrument are always in order." At the blackboard, in addition to white, blue and red crayons. In the left half of the classroom are round rotating platforms with magnetic compasses. The same Nikanor Ignatievich Shuryaninov is in charge of the whole office. In the classroom is already sitting teacher Sergei Ivanovich Frolov. Personality is no less remarkable than M. Bespiato. Sergei Ivanovich read his lectures so simply and meaningfully that we could almost visibly see all the forces tormenting the wandering arrow of the magnetic compass. What was said was immediately reproduced in drawings and formulas on the blackboard with coloured chalk. Frolov did not rush his story, so that we had time to write down and draw everything. The lectures were so good that if you write them down, you won't need any textbooks. Gradually, we moved to the definition and destruction of deviation, rotating on the platform and bearing on 8 courses true Nord, marked on the wall of the study. Thanks to Sergei Ivanovich, we knew the deviation firmly. Coming to the ships, we did not let our instructor down. Training in artillery fire control and in torpedo firing was conducted in special rooms. Another session in the artillery firing room. It is conducted by Winter, the same one who was an artilleryman on the Aurora when the cruiser made its historic shot. At the firing range, on the backdrop, a cloudy sky is painted, a rippling sea, lighting equipment, can create any visibility. The target ship, with the help of various devices, can move at any course angle and at any given speed. The fire manager is as if in the war room and observes the entire situation at sea, in his power to change the course and speed of his ship. The task is not easy at all. It is necessary within 2 or 3 minutes to determine the elements of movement of the target, the change of distance over the past minute, to make a decision from what distance to open fire, to shoot and move to defeat. Every second is precious. It would seem that there is nothing to worry about. It is not a battle but just a lesson in the shooting room, but each fire manager immediately turned crimson or pale. We took turns in controlling the fire. Sasha Kozlovsky, Julius Romanovsky, who transformed during the shooting and acted with extraordinary passion. Vasya Osiko, one of the ringleaders and hunters of all sorts of stories, showed outstanding artillery abilities and justified Shane's assurances that if Osiko would treat artillery with the same zeal as to the stories of tall tales, he could make a decent naval artillery. The dedicated labour of our instructors in the artillery art has borne fruit. A good half of the course succeeded in artillery affairs. Alexei Katkov, with whom I served on a squadron of the Black Sea Fleet during the war, became a flagship artillerist of the Navy. Julius Romanovsky, head of a research institute. Vasily Afinogenov, a prominent artillerist in the Navy. Others, such as Fokin Volkov, commanded during the war large formations of surface ships. Artillery training was replaced by training in the office of torpedo firing. Here the rules seem to be much simpler. The essence is reduced to solving a triangle, 2 sides of which the path of the enemy and the path of the firing ship. The third E, the path of the torpedo. Define these elements and it's done, but everything turns out to be much more complicated. The range of the torpedo is 3 times less than the range of the projectile, so to the point of torpedo salvo must be able to sneak under enemy fire several tens of cable meters, move alternating courses among the falling and aimed at you shells for several minutes. Firing devices are the simplest. Torpedoes take minutes, not seconds, to reach the target, so the whole problem is in choosing the angle at which the torpedo should be fired to cover the likely errors. Unforeseen elements of maneuvering target. You should shoot several torpedoes, directing them fan. Such salvos can be produced from a maximum of 3. There are no more torpedoes on the destroyer. His mistakes artilleryman can correct, changing the trajectory of the flight of projectiles in range and direction. Torpedo man is deprived of such an opportunity. If you make a mistake, it's all for naught. Didn't notice how the enemy tricked. Torpedoes missed the target. The hard work of the whole crew was wasted. In addition, the torpedo is a machine with a complex economy. It must be prepared for action with jeweler's precision. And we naively imagined that firing torpedoes was easy. They trained us to the hilt. A lot of our brother was sitting in the torpedo firing room at off hours. And in general, the closer to the end of the school year, the more often and longer we began to linger in the evenings in classrooms, offices, and in the company room. The inexorable was approaching. State exams. Since the second year of study, VP Gavrilov became our chief. We could address him on any question of study, fleet life, and always get a comprehensive answer. We respected him very much for his brilliant mind, for his ability to find a common language with the He took care of us in a fatherly way and helped us in many ways. In the last year of the course, our minds were occupied with the idea of a watch with a stopwatch, the kind that the previous graduating class had received from the Central Committee of the Komsomol. In those years, watches were almost a luxury, and for us they became an object of dreams. One evening in the company room entered Alfarov, Ryazanov, and Marisanov, all the leading 3 of the course. We were at Commissar Volkov, talked about the watch. We, said Alfarov. So far we have nothing to please you. We have learned one thing. Last year the Central Committee of the Komsomol gave watches to the last graduating class as those called up to the Navy in the 23rd year of Komsomol mobilization. In our course, many of the same draft, and there are also those who were drafted a year earlier. The Commissar agreed to write a petition to the Central Committee of the Komsomol, with which some of the cadets would have to go to Moscow. Vasya Osiko and I were entrusted with this task. Having received a written petition signed by Volkov, we set off for Moscow. Having arrived in the capital, we agreed to meet the next day at the Commandant's office, and from there to go to the Central Committee of the Komsomol. It was not possible to get to the Secretary of the Central Committee of Komsomol we needed at once. We were asked to come another day. We arrived at exactly the appointed time. Hello, guys. What brings you here? What business? These words greeted us, Secretary. We report the essence of the case. Our request to encourage the Komsomol members who went to the fleet in the 22nd, 23rd years. What a shame! We did not know that the current graduating class of the Naval School consists of Komsomol members who joined the Navy in the 22nd, 23rd years. That's it, guys. We bought the watch with gold. You know it's not easy, but don't be discouraged. We'll do our best. I'm sure the boys will have a Komsomol watch. And how are things going with you? State exams are coming up. Do your best. Keep your Komsomol honor high, as they say in the Navy, 7 feet under your keel. Say hello to all the guys from the Komsomol Central Committee. Have a good trip. As soon as we returned to the company, the whole fraternity of our course gathered to hear how our mission in Moscow ended. State exams began with a written work on navigation with the solution of an astronomical problem. This day in the school was especially solemn. Silence. Everyone walked as if on tiptoe. The parquet floor of the Revolution Hall was wiped to a mirror shine. Tables were arranged in 6 rows all along the hall. There are as many of them as there are examiners. The distance between the rows of tables is at least 2 meters. On each table there is a navigation chart, a laying tool, necessary aids, navigation tables, several well-sharpened pencils, and not a single rubber band. By each table is a stool. In the distance, near the bandstand itself, across the hall are several tables covered with green cloth for the members of the State Examination Committee. To the right and left of these tables, along the walls, a few empty tables. obviously for the works that we will pass. We enter the hall. Everyone chose a table and stood near it. The members of the commission appear, all navigational luminaries of the fleet, together with them somewhat excited Jedrimovich, Alexeyev, Rybakov, and Sarayaninov. The commission is seated at the tables. We sit down too. Melchiams, comrades, cadets, addressed us the chairman of the commission. Each of you has a task on the table. Please begin. Time is running out. For the execution of the task is given 3 hours. Everyone opens their bag and takes out the assignment. Some read it twice. Others immediately get to work. After a while, our wise men get up and leisurely go around the rows, calming those who are overly worried. It is already the 2nd hour of the time given to us. Puffing, the first to finish the work were Hivanen, Volkov, Alferov, followed by all the others in a heap. Soon we found out there were no fallen down. Hirvonen had the best work. Well done, Sasha, well done. After the oral exam in astronomy, seeing our overstrain, Gavrilov advised us not to do anything on the eve of the next exam, but to walk along the embankment and go to bed on time. The advice was wise, and we followed it. The remaining exams went easier. All passed everything and were admitted to summer practice on warships as ship cadets. Instead of visors, we wore caps with visors. They were called midshipmen in the Navy. The mood couldn't be better. Give us the Navy. We can move mountains. The meaning of summer practice as ship cadets was to give the opportunity to undergo training in command positions, to test the ability to independent command work in the conditions of service on a warship, the ability to control artillery fire. Tridest met this goal were battleships, a crew of more than 1,000 people, multi-caliber artillery, the whole way of ship life, strictly in accordance with the ship's charter. Battleships were the embodiment of maritime culture and its legislators. None of us had never been on such ships before. Turning curiosity, we approach on Aquarius to the board of the flagship of the fleet battleship Marat. Our group of ship's cadets will be trained on it. Watchmen, taking the moorings of Aquarius, act skillfully, as in a drill. Lead fleet men with cranes skillfully. Without a command, put them under all the bulges of Aquarius, which can scratch the side of the battleship. The watch commander is armed with binoculars. On the hand of his left hand hangs a small megaphone to transmit commands and to communicate with the aft signal bridge. There's no one else on the ute. We still see yokels, can see that the service on the Marat is carried out according to all rules of marine art. It looks like it won't be easy for our brother. We unloaded, put our belongings at the aft fighting deck house. We're lined up on the starboard side of the utes. It means that we are welcomed on the ship with honour, as the command staff, otherwise we would have been lined up on the port side. In front of the whole crew they show that they're not just anybody, but commanders. We even raised our nose at me. So Shenyovsky appeared, a tall, gaunt man with thin features of a carefully shaved face. There's more metal in his voice than complacency. At ease. You are on the flagship battleship, which was the first, not without the help of Komsomol members, came into service after the defeat of the invaders. You'll be accommodated in the wardroom, not far from the wardroom. You will have to eat in the wardroom of the chief officers. The chief bosun Zakharov is in charge there. You will have to solve all the questions with him. After you get settled, you will receive further instructions about your duties and tasks. Meanwhile, the commander came out of the aft hatch, accompanied by the ship's duty officer. Hello, fellow ship's cadets. We are glad to welcome you aboard our ship. Allow me to introduce myself. I am the commander of the battleship Vadim Ivanovich Ivanov, not Ivanov, but Ivanov. I hope things will go well with us. Each of you will be assigned duties. Your practice will begin with a detailed study of the ship. Comrade Watch Commander, you've got cranes overboard again. Discharge the cadets. The commander's voice is calm, his speech is smooth and clear. A somewhat rounded face is painted with a benevolent smile. Attentive grey-blue eyes seem to notice everything. What a thing, talking to us, and he saw the irregularities overboard. We were appointed assistant commanders, on the main caliber turrets and on the mine counter-caliber plutons. Lead, supervise, teach and educate. The commanders of towers, plutons and other chiefs will ask you. Jokes the cheerful Ivan Gorev. The CEO gathered us together and announced that we would have a month to study the ship. He gave everyone a common notebook, in which everyone must draw the whole ship, all steam, water, air lines, the whole system of their switching, the whole scheme of the electrical system, and the ways of its switching, and everything else that everyone considers necessary. In a month's time, there will be a test on the knowledge of the ship's device. This enumeration alone was depressing. When and how we will be able to go through all the compartments and depict them in the drawings. The cabin compartment of chief petty officers helped us, or rather, the fact that we, eating there, communicated with such experts of our business as Chief Petty Officer of Bilge Maidenov, electricians, Nosov, torpedoists, Borodin and others. I was appointed Assistant Commander of the first turret. The commander there was a 1925 graduate of our school. He told me without any offences. So see, and together with the tower commander, search all the nooks and crannies. Don't hesitate to ask questions. A tower in real life is not a blueprint. Our chief foreman, the tower's owner, is a great expert in his work. If you're going to climb the tower, take off your cloth uniform with regalia and put on your working dress. We started from the underworld, from the pin, the lower support of the whole tower. The balls of the bearing in which the pin rotates vertically, each of them is like a big fist. In the shell cellar, the shells are in perfect order and condition in racks, each of which cannot be moved without the help of ratchet rods. In the charging cellar, pouches with half-loads almost as big as me. All around is marvellous cleanliness. Not a speck of dust. On the deck there are mats made of hemp. We climb higher and get into the reloading compartment, where shells and semi-loads are fed from elevators to the loading trays. Motors, clutches, genie, for smooth guidance, levers, pulls, shafts, rollers, wires, pipelines. Everything is so much that it seems to be impossible to understand forever. We go up even higher, to the Holy of Holies, the combat compartment where the guns are loaded, each vertically aimed, and the whole turret horizontally. Here, in fact, the firing takes place. For independent firing, there is a huge armoured rangefinder in the turret. The commander observes the firing using the turret periscope, which is protected by an armoured hood. The impression from what we have seen is grandiose. What a structure! In the combat compartment, all three barrels, like the trunks of a giant monster, are frozen in a horizontal position. What kind of force should be applied to push a half-ton shell, half charges of powder into the Having accurately guessed my mute question, the tower foreman commands. Sidorov, turn on the middle. Separate loading. Businesslike, noiselessly, some motors hummed below. The gun lock opened. The reloader approached. Almost from under our feet with clanking appears a huge-sized chain gal with a large, snake-like head and climbs into the gun chamber. The foreman explains, now the Klotz as if dosapalate shell in the gun. Watch what will happen next. While Klotz was sending the shell, the half-loading door on the reloader opened. After a moment's pause, Klotz went back into the barrel, but at a shorter distance. This, then, is our hard worker has sent the first half-load. Look what now. The petty officer clearly enjoyed commenting on the work of the mechanism. Klotz went down the barrel a third time, at an even shorter distance. Now he sent in a second half-load, several poodles in weight. The gun looked closed. U.S. Sidorov center on automatic loading. Everything worked in the same orderly, consistent manner, as if they were not mechanisms, but living intelligent beings. The gun, having risen to a corner of elevation, as if crouched down in order to push out a shell with a monstrous force, to send it into the hated enemy. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Stroking the barrel with the palm of his hand, said the petty officer. That's something else. When firing, the turret is like a living being, only it doesn't speak with a human voice. If everything is in order, it's like your huge cat purring, and if there's something wrong, it'll immediately raise its voice, as if asking for help from a human being. Well, if he growls, it means it's bad. All stop. All levers, joints examine, feel. The tower is smart. We live in so affectionately, as if about a friend, the petty officer spoke about the first turret of the battleship Marat. Almost every day, private turret, gun, plutong, as well as general, main and mine caliber separate, exercises began. Finally, general shipboard ones in day and night conditions, training on the loading machines, day and night, the crew in labor. We cadets are caught up in the whole cycle. We are suffocating from the lack of time to perform tasks on the program of our internship. All this time we felt on ourselves what hellish labor we should put in, how much sweat each of us would have to sweat before the skill would appear, before more than 1,000 orchestra, the battleship crew, would be debugged and played in order to be ready for firing. I.e. And not only I, but almost all of us, enjoyed the service on a battleship. It is an excellent school. Whoever passes it will surely benefit the fleet, and he himself will succeed in naval affairs. A few days after we got used to the ship, we began to be assigned to keep watch on the upper deck as assistant watch commander. At the bow, the assistant watchkeeper had to watch the order from the stem to the second chimney together with the watch officer. Further to the stern, the second assistant watchkeeper at the UT was engaged in this business. The most crowded place on the ship is the bow, the tank. There they smoke rest, spirits and cokes breathe fresh air. There in leisure hours they sing, dance and tell all sorts of tales. In such a large crew as the battleships, there are a great number of talented storytellers, dancers and singers. The job of the assistant watch commander on the tank is to make sure that the order befitting a flagship of the fleet is always observed there. My first watch in this role. I went around the places I have to watch. Everything seems to be in order. I inspect the water surface in the bow sector, which is also part of my duty. Suddenly I hear a loud voice. Marussia is coming, get away. We are standing on the Luga roadstead. There are no women on the ship. What Marussia could be here? There's no one except the ship commander coming from the stern on the starboard side. I run towards him, report and accompany the commander going to the tank. No men, no one, as if blown away by the wind. You can be free. With these words, Ivanov went down to the lower deck through the forward vestibule. It became clear to me that among themselves the Red Fleet called the commander Marussia. Strange. Why? Then I found out, for her soft, high timbre voice, for the same soft, delicate manner of dealing with people. We made progress and even, as they jokingly said, got a promotion. We were allowed to perform the duty of assistant watchmaker at the Ute. Not anywhere but on the Ute. This is already an honor, trust. The whole service is there. You can only turn around in time. Take barges with food, send people to Kronstadt for work or to the hospital. One shore leave is worth it. It is necessary to send several hundred men at once, to examine each one, to make sure that he was shaved, trimmed, dressed according to the uniform and neatly. His belt plaques were polished. The ship is a flagship. Boats and dinghies with superiors are coming and going every now and then. Together with the watch commander you are spinning, so that the time of 4-hour watch flies by unnoticed, and your legs are buzzing and you want so much, if not to lie down, then at least to sit down, to rest from your righteous labours. The senior artilleryman of the battleship Verbovik is a remarkable man, having grown up like I, Shumashev G.I., Levchenko I, Drin from the juniors of the Tsarist fleet, having risen to the rank of naval conductor, having received naval education in the first half of the 20s. He was a born artilleryman, an idol of his commanders and artillery electricians. The crew is allowed to swim. He is the first to jump into the water from the upper deck from a height of 10 meters. Followed by the gunners, he will never get off the steamboat approaching the gangway, but will jump 2 meters away to the lower platform of the gangway. He will start fluffing his commanders. Only feathers fly and ears wither. But for them, his gunners, he would go to hell on the horns with his chest to protect them. No one ever took offense at him. They also forgave him the bosun's turns of speech because he used them without malice, not out of a desire to humiliate a man. Verbovik knew his artillery like no one else. He could perform the duties of any of the gun crew. He shot. You'll never find such a man. Artillery was his life, his verse apparently. That's why Vadim Ivanovich, who hated any swearing, put up with some peculiarities of Verbovik, a more than notable personality in the fleet. During coal-loading, only senior artilleryman Verbovik and senior navigator Chernyshev were exempted from emergency work. They alternately performed the duty of watch command. Coal dust is a cloud. Verbovik, taut, fast and energetic, is on watch in all white. Even his socks are white. There is dirt all around, and he is in white. We looked at him and were amazed. One day we couldn't stand it and asked him what the reason was. With a sly squint of his eyes, Verbovik answered, "Is it possible to wear cloth uniforms during a coal strike? You can't wash it afterwards. And this white, which has turned black, I'll take it to my sweetheart. She'll wash it in lye, and everything will be as good as new again. That's it. Mind you, in the Navy, intelligence is the first thing." Several thousand tons of coal were loaded on the battleship. They also took fuel oil. It was used in the furnaces of steam boilers, when the speed of more than 20 knots was needed. So during the campaign, the battleship smoked like a good factory. and the wooden planking of the upper deck was covered with slag, as if someone purposely small like sand, slag, shovel scattered. One could not sleep on the upper deck, and inside the rooms it was hot and stuffy. There are no portholes in the crew's living quarters, except for a few cabins located aft and on-board cabins near the engine rooms. The temperature in the crew cabins is such that in 6 to 8 hours the water from the wash basins evaporates completely, as if it had never been there. Everyone has enough to do on the ship. Since you are the assistant to the tower commander, everything that falls under his command, the tower personnel, cabins, the upper deck near the tower, and the fighting deckhouse, is your responsibility. Cleaning, organizing, keeping things in order is also your job, so you have to get up before wake-up. And going to bed, we had to go to bed at midnight. We have to prepare for political classes, work for the wall newspaper. Such the first political class in my life. Everyone prepares for it as much as for the state exam. The tower's personnel quarters. There's a lot of people. Everyone is interested in what the commander will say. Many of those present are either my age or older by a year or two, and if we talk about the service, even more. I look at the outline and I can't get away from it. I'm just skipping along the outline. There is no proper contact with the audience. There is no interest in what I say. Some listen with an indifferent look. I feel even more embarrassed. My palms are burning, my neck is on fire, my jacket is soaked, but it's no use. Now minutes seem like hours. I talked away the prescribed amount of time without taking his eyes off the notes. Finally, the signal for a break. I thought there wouldn't be one today. I'm not happy with myself. I'm upset by my ineptitude. I'm going up from the wardroom to the lower deck. Comrade Cadet Andreev. I shuddered with surprise, turned around and saw the deputy commissar of the ship Yakovlev, a former locksmith worker. We went up to the upper deck with him. Let's go aft, where the ship's command quarters are. Are you excited? It's not bad, because in indifference you can never do a good job. Are you disappointed that the audience was silent? Oh, very much so. It's good that they were. I'm sure it will be better next time. Well, why do you think they were silent? I don't know. Everything I said seemed to be right, but it turned out wrong, I said with annoyance. Would you like me to tell you what's the matter? Calm down at last. You are not a red maiden, a commander. A commander should be able to restrain his emotions and subdue the will. The first one. Well, it happens that the first pancake is a failure, but then, like lace and taste extraordinary. Do you like pancakes? Very much. Involuntarily, my face broke into a smile. Me too. My mother is a great pancake baker, and I'm even more skilled at baking them, so we have the same taste as Russian people. Why don't we go to my cabin? We're going down to the aft quarters. My excitement somehow faded away at once. There are many books on the shelf in the cabin. Works of Lenin, materials on party political work, fiction. I was interested in the play Lyubov Yarovaya. You're interested in Lyubov Yarovaya? It's a wonderful thing, highly partisan. It's breathtaking when you read it. I can let you read it. Only after the pancakes are laced, Yakovlev laughs. Sit down. Nothing. You can put the balalaika in the corner of the sofa. Well, have you caught your breath? Which quite. Now let's talk about business. Preparing for the political classes. You picked up interesting material, but you presented it dryly, boringly. Here in front of you are Red Fleetmen, most of whom are illiterate, some of them are illiterate. We are going to open a special literacy school for them. For such people, more than for anyone else, you need a simple story with lucid life examples. In political work, every word must hit the target, take the soul, always come from the heart, from a deep conviction and knowledge of the subject. Only such a heartfelt speech can touch the audience, make them believe in what they hear. You need an outline, but you should not use it the way you do. The listener gets the impression that you are not your own, but someone else's thoughts, someone else's words. And everyone wants to listen to you, to learn your thoughts, not someone else's. That's your mistake. In the wall newspaper, in the editorial board of which you are a member, the material, not without your help, has become calmer. People read with interest, discuss, because the essence reaches them. The language is understandable. Now you need to tell the political classes, and not only at them, in the same clear and interesting way, instead of loud reading. Let me see your outline. I give you a rather voluminous notebook. It's not an outline, it's a whole treatise. You know what? Next time, try to keep it as brief as possible. Okay? That's fine, you don't mind. Excuse me, I have to go to the amateur talent show. Yakovlev was an enthusiast of this business. The Marat's amateur talent show was well known in the fleet. I came to my cabin. The guys immediately noticed my condition. I had to tell everything as it was. One evening, August Andreevich Rull, the assistant of the senior artilleryman of the battleship, came down to our cabin. Estonian, with clear cornflower eyes, curly blonde hair, he made an impression of a very good-natured man. We'll start shooting tomorrow. I'll give you the rules of shooting. Repeat them so that you don't get a lamb. I'm in charge of the shooting. Any questions? No? See you later. With that rule left, a stack of rules was left on the table, and we all delved into them. Silence. Only the jets of fresh air from the fan blowing over the exuberant heads of the future fleet commanders. Tomorrow came. It was time for our controlled firing Chivzikami, 37mm shells, which tested the knowledge and ability of each to shoot according to the laws of artillery. Usually Roll, armed with artillery, with a grid, binoculars, sat on the armoured hood of the Pluton commander, whose duties we all took turns performing. On command, the 4-gun crews fired at a small ship's shield towed 20 cable meters from the battleship. There were all sorts of things. Good, like Volkov's, and worse, like Klevensky's. When the rules of fire were not observed at all, Roll, leaning over to the observation slit of the armoured hood, asked nonchalantly, "What is your mess?" That meant he was terribly dissatisfied. This is how I remembered the excellent artilleryman of Marat, and later the flagship artilleryman of the Black Sea Fleet, August Andreevich Rull, with whom I had a chance to fight together on the Black Sea. Autumn was approaching. The end of our internship was approaching. The last day. We are sitting at the tables of the wardroom, waiting for the commander of the battleship. When he appeared, everyone stood up. "Please be seated. We're pleased with your stay on the ship. I hope you have learned a lot of useful things that will be useful to you in your future service. We've grown accustomed to you and will miss you. I flatter myself with hope. You will also miss the Marat, on which you have acquired some commanding maturity. Thank you for your diligence. Goodbye." Everyone stood up again. "Matamred, chief mate, a tugboat is coming. Send the future commanders properly." The tugboat came. They loaded our small belongings on it, and we're aboard the Navy Man. We're off. Goodbye, Marat, on the battleship they're playing entry. To whom? It turns out that we are honoured. We stand excited facing the battleship. Yes, of things sex. The head of the school and the commissar were satisfied with the practice of the cadets. The troubles with sewing and fitting of uniforms began. The tailor's shop of the school and the port's sewing room were full of work, and we were impatiently waiting for the decision of the State Commission. In the meantime, everyone was called to the medical commission. What is this? Last year, there was no such commission. It turns out that some of the graduates were selected for naval aviation. Among those selected were Abankin, Neyubov, Kuznetsov, Bryandinsky, and a few others. Finally, the decision of the State Commission was announced. We were released from the school. 10 people who graduated from the school with the highest scores were given the right to choose the sea. Alas, I was not among the 10. Many wanted to serve on the Black Sea. I wouldn't have minded either. The day of production came. In the Hall of Revolution along the right wall, cadets of all courses are lined up. At the left wall in the center, the command, on the right hand, the teaching staff. In all doors, except for the doors of the art gallery, crowded freelancers and service personnel. After the welcoming ceremony of the command of the school, there was a solemn silence. Unusually exciting silence. Ringing, like a bell, sounds the order of graduation from the school. Everyone whose name is called out of the ranks receives from the hands of the head of the school certificate of graduation and stands on his left hand. Production is over. All cadets pass in front of us and the command of the solemn march. To think, we take the parade. For the first, most of the graduates, including the one writing these lines, were assigned to the Baltic. Nikolai Ovchinnikov went to the Black Sea. While we were receiving money allowance, lifting allowances, we got the glad tidings. The Komsomol Governorate Committee, on behalf of the Central Committee of the Komsomol, would present the graduates with watches. The commissar of the school informed us about it. The next day, in the same Revolution Hall, the secretary of the Komsomol Regional Committee handed each of us a watch. Not just any watch, but a watch with a stopwatch. Having received travel documents and instructions on where to return from vacation, we left the school, which had become our native one. The school is finished. Navigation sciences are mastered. We know the material part, Navy weapons. What is a ship, its structure, E2. We know how to shoot. What couldn't the school give us? The ability to work with people, to train them, to educate them, to manage them. Even those lucky who were junior commanders in the school, and they have not mastered this science properly. Where is the way out? How to fill the gap in the training of young commanders? And the way out was found. Simple and interesting. All graduates of the school after vacation returned to the Navy cruise, where for more than 2 months, as platoon commanders, trained new recruits undergoing formation training. I had to report to the 2nd Baltic Fleet crew, which was in Leningrad. I came to the crew in the first days of November, a few days ahead of schedule. I introduced myself to my superiors, the crew commander. You are appointed commander of the 1st platoon of the 6th Company. While the company commander is absent, you will perform his duties. In the cadre company, its commander has a list of junior commanders assigned to your company. Together with them, check the company room. It is on the 2nd floor. From the transition company, after sanitary treatment, take recruits. In your company, appointed a smart, from the bosun's petty officer. You won't be lost with him. Understood? Do it, but be more energetic. The crew commander admired. I turned around, clicked my heels, left the office, and, for the life of me, I can't figure out what to do, where to start. Let's start with the cadre company. I found where it's stationed. Who do you want to see? The officer on duty addressed me. To the company commander. 2nd door on the right. He's in his office. In the company room is tidy. The bunks are perfectly aligned and tucked in. Pot of drinking water is on a large stool. Polished aluminum mug is not tied. At the company duty officer's seat are proper instructions, a bat lantern. On the asphalt deck, scrubbed almost to parquet shine, a small iron box. I enter the company commander. At the table I see a not-so-young man with a lush moustache, austere dark brown eyes. On his tightly bunched figure fits well-tunic pants tucked into the boots. Vice Commander of the 6th Company Andreev, you, not without pride, I said, came to you for junior commanders. On duty, Sidorchuk to me. When he came, the company commander introduced us to each other and wished us success. We saluted and said good. Our comrade Sidorchuk, where are the junior commanders? Not without anxiety, I asked. In the petty officer's cabin. The guys are all worthwhile. It's not the first time they teach young men. Allow me to report, comrade commander. Here is the list, readily answered the company petty officer. No sooner had we entered the petty officer's cubicle, as Sidorchuk, with junior commanders of the 6th Company to me, stand up. Immediately behind the petty officer, lined up in height 12 people. Navy look? The commander of the 1st platoon, Andreev. I introduced myself. Until the arrival of the company commander, his duties are entrusted to me. We are ordered today to take in the company today young replenishment. Let's think together what and how we should do. Let's go to the company room. It was quite large. Solid double-decker wooden bunks almost half its width. In the second half there was a place for formation, pyramids for rifles. At the windows, massive wooden tables for classes and long, heavy wooden benches, hangers for overcoats and caps. In the company commander's room is a small table, an even smaller closet, 4 chairs and as many small benches. In the corner is a bed. Before I had time to look around properly, a messenger ran into the room. Sir Comrade Commander, you are required by the aide to the formation part. I went to the assistant. Now take 200 men in the transition company and go to Holland, where everyone will be given uniforms. Today, change everyone's clothes. Tomorrow, organize the shipment of personal belongings of recruits. The day after tomorrow, we'll start drill. We took our army and immediately led them to the warehouse. There we lined up the men in 2 rows. An hour did not pass as the 1st platoon, taking on their shoulders bales with uniforms, went to the company under the command of Sidorchuk. The next platoon took Petrov. The last, the 3rd, led me. I came to the company, and there's a hell of a lot going on. It's a bazaar. Someone is exchanging uniforms. Someone is trying something on. Someone cannot understand the unknown for him, previously unknown to him, navy pants with a flap. It's a joke. Only by dinner time we'd untangled ourselves. Everyone changed into work clothes. They didn't recognize each other. Shaved naked, with thin necks, in wide working clothes. The next day, when we were practicing with Sidorchuk, the door to the cabin without knocking opened, and appeared my classmate Vitaly Fokin, appointed commander of the 2nd platoon. I, of course, was very happy, but did not show it, kept a strictly official tone. Italy was even a little angry at me at first, but then he understood everything correctly. Some time later came another classmate, Estakov, who took the 3rd platoon. We agreed, in the presence of seniors and subordinates, to address each other strictly according to the regulations, and the next day arrived in Company Commander Danilkin. He turned out to be a great builder and methodologist. Rifle techniques, gymnastics with a rifle performed beautifully and easily. You can admire. He could assemble and disassemble a rifle even in the dark, but he was sharp, God forbid. Everyone feared him like fire. On November 7, our company, together with others, participated in a demonstration in Uritsky Square. For young people, it was such an event, which remains in the memory for a long time. After the holiday began daily 6 to 8 hour drill. Only a downpour or an earthquake could stop them. We, all 3 of us, who had gone through school in the preparatory school, even then we came to the company so exhausted that we stayed overnight in the crew. Under Danilkin's leadership we learned a lot. The 6th Company gradually, by all indicators, came forward. 2 months later on Uritsky Square, the young men of the crew took the military oath, solemn, severe, unique minutes. It was impossible to listen without excitement, as thousands of young men uttered words of loyalty to military duty, swore to protect the motherland, not sparing their lives. There are no words to convey it. It is necessary to see and experience. Even before the end of formation training, I was called to Kronstadt, to the headquarters of the Baltic Fleet. Of course, I got excited. Why would I do that? On the appointed day, with a sinking heart, went to the headquarters of the Baltic Fleet was located in a large 3-story building of the former engineering school, located against the Italian pond of the merchant harbour. I approached the front door. There is a sentry on the 1st floor. The staff duty officer who met me asked me to wait and went to his cabin. After a while he appeared and handed me up. I went up to the 2nd floor, knocked on the door of the office of the head of the administrative and construction department of the headquarters. I enter with some anxiety in my soul. At the desk, I see the commander of the cruiser Aurora, Polenov. On your orders, platoon commander Andreev arrived. Which Andreev is this? Now I know. You were the editor of the cruiser's wall newspaper on the 25th year abroad. I'm glad to see you as a brave commander. May I ask the purpose of my summons? As always, young people are impatient. They want to know everything quickly. The purpose of the summons is simple. We intend to appoint you Flag Secretary to the Chief of the Baltic Sea Naval Forces. I feel like I've been hit over the head with a shoe. Instead of being assigned to a ship, I'm being sent as a secretary. I was on my way to the Navy to serve on ships. Don't worry. Earlier Flag Adjutant was an important operational rank. Nowadays, Flag Secretary's duties will be simpler. A little time will pass. You'll learn everything. You'll grow into the business. I will not serve as Flag Secretary. What do you mean you won't? The Polenov's neck turned pink. Nadine Summerall sent me to serve on ships, not to do paperwork. I won't serve as a Flag Secretary. Biting my teeth, I blurted out. Yes, you will, Polenov shouted. And now, Andreev, go back to Leningrad. I flew out of the headquarters with a bullet, slipping the sentry an unmarked pass. On the train, a little cooled down from a short and very unpleasant confrontation with my superiors, I realized that such a conversation would not go in vain. I went back to the carriage. In the company, only talk about the upcoming field exercise. We checked weapons, uniforms, condition of shoes, boots and headphones. They received camping equipment, small sapper shovels, camp kettles and bags, in which everyone had to have a change of underwear, inviolable dry rations and various small things needed in the camping life. None of us had ever been on a hike on land, especially in winter conditions. Therefore, it was also the first test for us. The convoy with campers, camp kitchens and targets left a day earlier. The whole 2nd Baltic Fleet crew followed. They had to cover more than 30 kilometers. The pace 120 steps per minute. Formation, in the order of company numbers. 2 hours of walking, a 15-minute break. After a while, our company, together with the 5th, left in a large village, where they were quartered in huts. On the street smoked camp kitchens with soup and buckwheat porridge. In half an hour, there was a queue with kettles at the kitchens. They brought the food to us, the commanders. How tasty it was after a 5-hour march. It was impossible to convey. The first meal in the field, it turns out that even in the field in camp kitchens, you can make a delicious meal. We settled down to rest. On the street, a walking, changing every 2 hours, sentries. In the middle of the night, we combat alarm. Our company was the first to assemble and received a commendation. The next day was spent in exercises of departments, platoons and companies in the field. We had to work with sapper blades. After dinner, night march 15 kilometers, we settled in another settlement. Each company equipped itself in the field, mainly in the ravines, shooting range. Rifle firing began. 5 shots per brother, a distance of 50 meters. Everyone performed the exercise. Some knocked out up to 50 points. Danielkin was satisfied. After lunch again held shooting in more difficult conditions, and it went decently. The news that our company is the first on the results of shooting was met with universal jubilation, even Danielkin always stern, and that's shown. There was a reason for that. His labor was not wasted. Before dinner, the crew commander gathered the command staff and set the tasks. At night, 3 battalions are marching to seize the Pulkovo Heights in the first half of the day, by 12 o'clock. The offensive is conducted from 3 directions, as indicated on the issued map. 3 hours after dinner, all were raised on the alert. After gathering in, the companies announced the combat task. Began the last day of exercises in the field. By 5 in the morning, we reached the initial boundaries. Further, we had to crawl along the virgin snow for 3 or maybe 4 kilometers. Runovers, throws Lee down in the snow, dig in so until dawn, until the attack line. Danielkin was inexorable. Crawl, and only crawl, look for every hillock for shelter. It was freezing, and we were all soaked like in a bath. When the target was 300 meters away, a rocket went off, the signal for a general attack. We got up and ran with shouts of hurrah, no strength, no air. It seems that now I'll lie down in the snow and won't be able to get up, but we made it. We reached the goal. The horn player played the bugle call. I've never heard a more pleasant signal in my life, that's it, and the strength is gone. The drill is over. All that was left was to walk 20.5 kilometers to the crew. There it is visible, Leningrad, as on the palm of my hand, very close. The quartermasters took everyone to the huts. We had a big lunch. We rested for an hour. The signal big gathering. We lined up in formation. The crew commander addressed it. The drill is over. Now you have an idea of fighting on land, where the sailors of the revolution covered themselves with unfading glory. Thank you for your service. The honor of leading the column is given to the 6th Company under the command of Danielkin. We moved with songs. We came to the crew completely exhausted. We ate dinner, almost falling asleep. When we got to the company, we could have laid down here, but no, first wipe off the sweating weapons and then go to bed. Everyone, as soon as he put his rifle in the pyramid and received permission from the junior commander to rest, immediately climbed up on the bunks and instantly fell asleep. We, platoon commanders, fell asleep on benches and chairs in the company commander's quarters. That was the end of the young men's formation training. Our useful internship, too. Everyone was thinking to what ship, to what position he would be assigned, whether his dreams would come true. For me, this question, it seems, was already solved. The next day after the end of the field exercises, I was called by the crew commander. According to the order, you must report to the fleet headquarters tomorrow with all your belongings. Here's your orders. Today, turn in all your belongings. I wish you further success. Danielkin has been warned. A firm handshake and I'm out the door, in the corridor. I'm stunned, discouraged. I went to the company commander, thanked him for his studies. And thank you for your service, he said, Danielkin. I am a coastal sailor, but still I wish you 7 feet of clear water under the keel from the bottom of my heart. Again in Kronstadt. Now from Oranienbaum I reached it by sledge. At the headquarters I got not to Polenov but to his deputy. I introduced myself. Hello, Comrade Andreev. Familiarize yourself with the extract from the order. I took it in my hands. I read it. It's written in black and white about my appointment as Flag Secretary to the Chief of the Baltic Sea Naval Forces. Sign here when you've read it. Give me your papers and certificates. You'll be dining on the 3rd floor in the wardroom. You'll be assigned a cabin on the Komsomolets. The ship's commander has been given the appropriate orders. Arrange your personal affairs today. The Chief of Naval Forces wants you to start your duties from tomorrow, after the flag hoisting. I advise you to familiarize yourself today with the location of the controls in the headquarters building. Forgetting about lunch, I went to the Komsomolets. The ship was under repair at the steam shipyard and for the years of our separation, as if aged, worn out. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I came to the headquarters. I had breakfast in the wardroom, inspected all the floors. In the reception room of the Chief of Naval Forces was no one. Suddenly the door opened and a dense man in a uniform tunic appeared. "Is that you, Comrade Andreev?" I thought. "Who is it wandering in the reception room? Come in, let's get acquainted. Senior Secretary Pyotr Stolyarov. I'm glad you've arrived. Now we'll work together. It'll be more fun and I'll feel better." "Who do I take my business from?" Open the lid of the bureau, all the files are there. Not many. "The old flag is gone, I'll tell you all about it later. They told me you were upset about your appointment. Don't grieve, everything will be fine. The main thing is to be more careful with the Chief of Naval Forces, not like with Polanov." No sooner had I opened the bureau than I heard the report of the duty officer on the headquarters to the Chief of the Baltic Sea Naval Forces. I stood up. I involuntarily pulled myself up, waiting in the at-attention position. Mikhail Vladimirovich Viktorov entered the reception room. It is the first time in my life that I meet a big naval chief so closely. I introduced myself with excitement. Having looked at me with a heavy evaluating look, Viktorov said briefly, "You'll come into the office when I call you." The situation is unfamiliar. I am in some tension. How will everything go? And suddenly from under the windowsill, which is the desk bureau, sounds a deafening bell. I shuddered. Not without trepidation, took the handle of the door of Viktorov's office, entered. The office is large with dark blue walls, bright huge windows, very beautiful stucco ceiling, from which descended a heavy bronze multi-light chandelier. To the right, along the wall, was a long mahogany table and 14 armchairs. To the left was a wooden coat rack, a small safe on a cabinet, and nearer the window, a massive bronze-adorned desk with 2 leather armchairs and a small coffee table in front of it. Between the desk and the wall is a rotating bookshelf. There are 2 more doors in the office. One, the one on the left, to the meeting room, and the second, in the office of a member of the Military Council, G.P. Kirev. Somewhat taken aback by everything I saw, I approached the desk at which sits the head of the Maritime Forces. "On your orders, I've arrived. From now on, when I call you, you don't have to report about it. Your duty is to assist me, run my errands, relay my orders, summon the men I need, report on those who have arrived for appointments, correspond with me. At all my visits to ships units, in all official trips, in campaigns, you are obliged to be near me, to record my remarks, orders, reports of subordinates. Obtain for these purposes the necessary accessories in the form of notebooks and other things. We start work at 8:20, and when we finish, you'll see for yourself." I see. Although, to be honest, nothing was clear to me, except for one thing. To acquire secretarial combat equipment, pens, pencils, rubber bands, needles with a strong thread for filing papers. For what transgressions all chagrin and anxiety overcame the poor flag, as abbreviated in the Navy called the Flag Secretary. To become on the party account, went to the commissar of the headquarters, an old Bolshevik, submariner electrician by specialty, A. Dobrozrakov. His small office was decorated with a very good portrait of Lenin. All the furnishings were exceptionally simple. The commissar, a man of powerful build, with large facial features, attentive, strict, intelligent eyes, somehow immediately disposed of himself. His whole appearance was exactly like that of the sailors of the Revolution, Lenin's faithful helpers in the struggle for the power of the Soviets. Dobrozrakov was very attentive to people and always, in everything fair. Like everyone else, I liked him from the first meeting. Entering the office, I reported as usual. "How is the newly baked flag? I guess you are still rebelling. Everything does not seem so hot, Komsomol head." The commissar asked me with benevolent irony. I laid out everything that bothered and worried me. "That you speak frankly is good. It means that you are thinking about business, about work. You're asking me what to do. There are rules, stick to them. I advise you to be yourself. Don't get cocky, don't boast about your position. Treat people with respect and consideration, be even-handed in dealing with them. You should think about what you're saying, not like Polanov. Come back in 10 days, we'll talk about the party assignment. Well, take care. If it skids, count up to 100. If it doesn't help, up to 1,000. Smiling, the commissar said goodbye to me. A surprising thing, the conversation with the commissar, whom I saw for the first time in my life, was so cordial, friendly. Despite the big difference in age, in life experience, and in the experience of sea service, that I felt better at once. Indeed, not gods burn pots. We will cope with the assigned task. With these thoughts, I fell asleep to the measured rhythm somewhere below the cabin of the working donkey. The service at the new place began. In mastering secretarial skills willingly and in many ways, I was helped by Stoliarov, who had all the cases in exemplary order. There was only one thing left, to follow his example. During the first 2 weeks, not without Stoliarov's help, I already knew well what, where and how it was located in Kronstadt, all the heads of naval bodies and commanders of formations. Soon I had to accompany Viktorov to the steam shipyard, where the commanders of ships under repair reported to the chief of the Baltic Sea naval forces about the progress of repairs, claims to the plant. Both of them had their share. Flag barely had time to write down. The next day, Viktorov, as soon as he appeared in his office, demanded from me the records made at the plant. How good that I managed, working almost till midnight, to put them in order. I'm handing over my creation to the Chief of Naval Forces. Of course I'm worried. He reads it, he's silent. I'm like on hot coals, even my legs got hot. Finally, Viktorov finished reading. He raised his eyes and unexpectedly for me, today move from the Komsomolets to the Marat. After dinner on the battleship, to be sure. I can't understand anything. Why am I being moved to a battleship? I left the Chief of Naval Forces and went straight to Stoliarov. He, of course, explained everything to me at once. The Chief of Naval Forces wants you to be always at hand. That means the probationary period is over. Now for 2 years, no less, you'll be a secretary. I'm sorry, a flag secretary. From the moment of resettlement on the battleship, everything went somehow differently. Soon Dobrazrakov called on the phone. How are things going at the flag? Is it good on the battleship? Everything's fine. If it's all right, come to me in an hour. You got a deal? All right then. As agreed, I came to see the commissar. I called you, Comrade Andreev, for the following reason. Mr. Dobrazrakov began at once. To talk about your party assignment. We want to attach you to the Komsomol cell, and besides to assign you to lead the circle of current politics during the winter period. What do you think about it? Let you decide, so it will be. It's good that you agreed, but I want to warn you right away. This circle is for women. It includes female staff and wives of commanders working in the headquarters and political department. Women's. No, I can't do that. I can't handle women. What do you mean you can't handle women? If you can't cope with 3 dozen women, how will you educate the Red Fleet men and command them? At the party bureau, we thought long and hard and decided to entrust the women's circle to you. Next week is the first class. Agreed? If there's a hitch, come by any time. Anything I can do to help. You'll get the description of the circle from Bobilev in the political department. At the first session gathered a little more than half of the circle, age from 19 to 45. I introduced myself to the audience and began my story on the subject. Overcoming the embarrassment, I got carried away and did not notice how the time allotted for the class had expired. One of the listeners, the owner of 1 billion freckles, adorning a pretty face with a cheerful nose and mischievous blue-grey eyes, asked, "Will you be teaching the next class?" "Absolutely, as long as you don't give up on me." Everyone smiled and, saying goodbye, began to disperse. Almost everyone came to the second session. I mustered myself, and my listeners. Some were not shy to answer questions and even asked to say that they can and should read to the next topic. The head of the circle, Komsomol Lilia Filipovkaya, was a good assistant to me. Once in the corridor, I was stopped by Dobrazrakov. In his eyes sparkled cheerful sparks. Ikantin told me, "I can't cope with women. I'm afraid of them. I'm timid. But you've managed to entice your listeners to drink. That's good. But make sure the men don't mash your ass." After my resettlement on the battleship, Viktorov established the following order. Every day in the morning after hoisting the flag, we went together with him to the headquarters. Walking along the wall, at which stood all the destroyers of the Baltic fleet, Viktorov scrutinized each ship. From him did not escape any detail. His remarks the head of the maritime forces said aloud, and I demanded detailed notes. Then he called to himself negligent commanders together with the commander and taught fleet drive. One Friday, during another morning trip, Viktorov suddenly said, "After lunch, we will go to Leningrad, where we will check the progress of repair of ships at the factories. I have no idea what to organize. I went to Stoliarov. He's the one who gave you an intelligence test," Pyotr said cheerfully. "You can ride on the ice only on horseback, then by suburban train and in Leningrad by automobile. Find a horse in the main military port. Call the duty officer. The car in the Leningrad port. Warn the port commander Zuev. About the repair, call the flag mechanic of the fleet. He will organize everything for Monday. Before lunch, Viktorov asked if everything was ready for the trip. I reported, flag mech transferred, Zuev warned. Everything will be organized for Monday. Why Monday? Saturday is your furlough day. I don't have a furlough day. What kind of nonsense are you talking? Viktorov said unhappily. It's like all command staff. Once every 2 weeks. Comrade Chief of Naval Forces. Good. Let's go to lunch. No sooner had they returned from the wardroom than, opening the door, Viktorov threw open the door. We'll be leaving in half an hour. And there is no transportation, no sledge. I called the port duty officer. Quickly get the mare to the gangway. What mare? The one on which the Chief of Naval Forces will ride to Oranienbaum. Later Stolyarov told me how, in his presence, the commander of the main military port Proskin complained about me to the Chief of Naval Forces for mischief. Mare to the gangway, laughed heartily Viktorov. Here the youth is boiling, so we'll forgive him. As it became common, mare to the gangway. Even Viktorov, especially when he was in good spirits, often said in a joking tone, call this very mare to the gangway. Let's go on business. Visits to factories, ships which the head of the maritime forces made review, presence at meetings concerning the organization of service and repair, communication with people who are responsible work in the fleet, did not pass for me in vain. The post of flag secretary, of course, had its considerable advantages, but, alas, it did not accustom to the commander's independence, did not give the experience of working with the ship's personnel. In these matters I was lagging behind. Consequently, there was only one way out, to get to the advanced training courses sooner, to get a specialty there, and to the ship. My evening time was not regulated by the commander. Therefore, after he left the headquarters, I often stayed late to study, to read an interesting book, to prepare for the classes of the circle. Often it was in these evening hours I was visited by Dobrozra. Once we had a long talk with him about life, about duty, about calling. I know that you are raving about special courses, Comrade Andreev, but you should not rave, but prepare for the exams. Do not waste time on trifles, the commissar instructed me. We urgently need our own commanders in the fleet. You young people are our hope. In your hands will take over the entire construction of the Navy. It's a serious matter, and we must prepare for it. What worries me is this. You have little life experience and you got to the top floor of the fleet. Everything goes through you to the Chief of Naval Forces with a report. What papers again through you? It's not hard to become conceited, to get infected with arrogance, to get sick with arrogance. Then a man is lost for the fleet. And not only for the fleet, but in general as a man of our new society. Here, brother, here's the point. You, red commanders, must prove that you are not worse, but better than the officers of the Tsarist fleet, not sergeants, but people of high culture, and in seafaring affairs yellow knowledgeable. Not only to me, but to all the young commanders was attentive Dobrozrakov. His soul cared for them. About them, the hope of the fleet, were his thoughts and concerns. His high partisanship, principle, integrity and selflessness served as an example to often without any warning. Dobrozrakov, smoking his unchanging pipe, came into Viktorov's office. If anyone was there at that time, the head of the maritime forces quickly sent him away. What these two men, Viktorov, a nobleman, non-partisan, and Dobrozrakov, a sailor of the revolution, talked about, I do not know. Their conversations sometimes dragged on until almost 2 o'clock in the morning. It was impossible to breathe in the office from the fumes of Makharovka, and Viktorov, having asked to bring him a cup of tea, did not receive anyone for a long time afterwards. Subsequently, Viktorov, who gave all his strength to the Navy service, applied for admission to the party and was accepted into its ranks. I think that Dobrozrakov had a lot of merit in it. Mikhail Vladimirovich Viktorov did a lot of useful things for the fleet. He was the first commander of the Pacific Fleet and had government awards for the successful construction of the fleet in the Far East. And in 1937, MV Viktorov became chief of the naval forces of the Red Army. So the more the sun warmed up, the livelier was the life on the ships wintering in Kronstadt. In spring, every ship is like a good anthill. Everyone is working hard, preparing for the beginning of the summer campaign, which is already behind the gates of the harbours. Ships hastily take off their winter coat. Insulation of upper decks, entrance vestibules over hatches, and gradually acquire a military look. Every now and then one or the other destroyer is testing the boilers and the characteristic whistling, snorting of steam is heard. Commanders are engaged in their turrets, gun emplacements remove winter grease, sparrows chirped like your nightingales, rooks have arrived, starlings have arrived. So it's April. The ice on the Neva River is about to break up, and in the bay it will crumble with a crystal ringing into fanciful crystals, like figurative needles, under the ship's bows. Ice is still floating on the Kronstadt roads, and some destroyer has already jumped out of the harbour and is performing the sacred navigational dance of determining and destroying deviation. The hard-working moorers and hydrographers are the first, and have long since gone into the bay to prepare a safe way for the whole fleet. The submarine, like a toothy pike, first cautiously appeared out of the harbour, and then nimbly got out on the small Kronstadt roadstead. Fleet tugs raced around the harbour. At the steamship works and at the docks there was the deafening crackle of pneumatic hammers riveting the ship's steel. Whole life, even in the city, ran more hurriedly. The ships began to paint the masts, and soon the bosuns would take care of the superstructures, and they would get to the ship's sides. And then, literally in 3 to 5 days, May-Day would come, but part of the ships will leave for the parade on the Neva, and the biggest, really, fleet parade will be held in Kronstadt. It will be received by the chief of the Baltic Sea Naval Forces himself, going around the slender rows of ships, sea beauties on a boat. He will congratulate the crews built along the boards. After that, the coveted summer voyage, exercises, firing, and campaigns will begin. At the headquarters, all life became more intense. It is understandable. After the winter hibernation, ships of the fleet began to sail. Marat stands on the Grand Raid. The crew is engaged in single-ship training. Chief of Naval Forces every morning from the battleship goes to the fleet headquarters. The ship accommodated a small marching staff, a member of the military council, Kiriv, Senior Secretary Stolyarov. With Stolyarov we lived friendly in the same cabin. It was in the aft part of the ship, where were the cabins of the commander, the commissar of the battleship, the chief of naval forces, a member of the military council, the commissioner of the fleet headquarters, a man more calm than I, benevolent, learned from service in the navy. Peter as if balanced our life and work together. One evening Dobrozrakov came to us and joyfully report, "Well, we have waited for Christ's day. Finally we will break away from Kronstadt, at least to the Krasnogorsk raid, but still closer to the ships that are based in the Luga Bay. We'll go." The next day, after rising, the bells of the loud battle rang. The horn players played the signal of battle alarm. Everyone ran to their places. Viktorov, taking binoculars, ran to the forward commander's bridge. The alarm is the same for everyone. Everyone must hurry to take their battle stations. The chief of naval forces is on the bridge, with him as it should be, and me. It was my first time on the bridge of a battleship. I felt as if I were present at some sacrament. You are there where the fate of the battle is being decided, above on the signal bridge. The duty officer of the marching headquarters is on duty. Going beyond the booms, the battleship gradually increased the course. The ship began exercises. Having measured the speed on a measured mile, in the afternoon Marat became on the Krasnogorsk roadstead, in the visibility of the coastal signal post, through which the connection with Kronstadt and Luga Bay went. At the end of the 20s in the summertime, and until deep fall, the ships of the Baltic fleet stood on the roadstead of Luga Bay. There was nowhere to conduct exercises except on the Seskarsky Pleasure, bumping into the wooded island of Gogland. Everywhere you turned, there were foreign territorial waters, foreign observation posts watching your every move. From the Finnish fort Aino, located on the northern shore of the Gulf of Finland, against our fort Krasnaya Gorka, with good binoculars you can see what is being done not only on the water of the Kronstadt Sack, but also on the southern, Soviet shore of the Gulf. The situation is ridiculously complicated. The Baltic fleet has taken a fancy to the Luga Bay to be closer to the most convenient areas for combat training. From Krasnogorsk raid, Marat moved to Luga Bay. Lushkai raid is beautiful, with warships frozen on its surface. It is especially beautiful at dawn, when the pink-red glow of purple colours their boards. In the morning silence, all sounds on the water are heard surprisingly far away, especially the chime of the ship's horns, beating off the time. On the Marat, 4 taps are struck. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, on all the ships, as if in answer to the Marat, the melodious chime of the lynxes. The silence is such that you can hear the aft signal bridge Paris Commune talking in a megaphone with the watch commander, as on the destroyer running along the deck, rushing to change the Red Fleet. Somewhere a dinghy was lowered, the bows rattled, the splashes of water from our rowing could be heard. The sun went down. On the Marat the horn players played the evening Zorja. In response, each ship with its own voice sang the song of the fading day. The flags are lowered. Only the anchor lights were on. The ships are frozen on the roadstead like huge living creatures. Their dark silhouettes are barely recognizable. One can spend hours admiring this spectacle. The destroyers blinked signal lights with the flagship of the fleet Marat, silently dropped anchor, and, like ghosts, disappeared, gone to sea on their night search. Standing on the bridge of the battleship, which is looking for and must attack destroyers, I watch how in the pitch darkness from the sea flies a flare, glimpses of searchlight indicating torpedo and artillery salvos. In response from the battleship's searchlight, flashes can be seen as just a few cable meters away from us, sharply turned around attacking destroyer, and covered by a smoke screen, zigzagged away after the attack in the darkness of night. All ships move in alternating courses, alternating moves. Everyone is obliged not to get confused and not to interfere, but to help in the attack of a comrade. In such conditions, hesitate commander even half a minute, and the collision of ships cannot be avoided. On a rainy night it is even worse. To see, hear, decide and attack, the commander, signalman, artilleryman and torpedoist, with their combat calculations, have only seconds at their disposal. Only the commander and crew, who are sharp, brave to the point of daring, perfectly mastering the ship and weapons, can accomplish such combat tasks. Chief of the Baltic Sea Naval Forces liked to conduct inspections. Most often he did it without warning. Usually the Chief of Naval Forces, together with a member of the Military Council, and the necessary flagship specialists of the fleet on a steamboat arrived at the ship that wanted to inspect, and gave the order, "Ship to inspect." The ship's bugler played the signal. The commands were given, "Ship to inspect. Open and light the rooms." The personnel who met the Chief of Naval Forces in formation on the upper deck scattered to their departments. In 3 or 4 minutes, the commander reported, "The ship is ready for inspection." Viktorov and Kireyev made the inspection dressed in blue Nanking work clothes. If it was a destroyer, then a day they inspected 1 engine room, 1 stoker, all the armament on the upper deck, 1 cabin of each combat unit, 2 or 3 cabins of the command staff, galley, all the storerooms and provisions. Viktorov knew how to make inspections and did it thoroughly. Nothing escaped the experienced eye of the former senior officer of the cruiser. He had some special sense of disorder. Each inspection ended with clarification of claims, separately from the rank and file, from the junior commanders, from the officers in charge. The claims were sorted out here on the ship. The chiefs who were not attentive to the needs and requests of their subordinates were especially annoyed. For this and from Kireyev hit hard. In the afternoon, flagship specialists reported their comments. Kireyev summarized the results of the review with the political apparatus. Viktorov, in his conclusions, not only stated the results of the inspection, but also analyzed the causes of shortcomings, gave instructions on how to eliminate them. All the inspectors returned to the battleship only for dinner. For me, as for many participants of such inspections, they were a good school. Viktorov, as a rule, was present at the most difficult firing. He knew the artillery as well as the navigator. One night I was awakened by a messenger. "The Chief of Naval Forces wants to see you." I looked at my watch. It's well past midnight. Why was I needed at this hour? I dressed as if I were on alert. I went to see Viktorov. "Let's go, without disturbing anyone, on the lower deck of the battleship." I said to me, "The Chief of Naval Forces," and then on the forward bridge. We walk along the deck with only blue night lights on in the rooms. I light a battery flashlight. Viktorov looks into the compartments. While we were getting to the nearest hatch to the forward combat deckhouse, a lot of remarks were made. We went up to the signal bridge. The duty officer of the marching headquarters reported the disposition. She called the signal light on both sides of the ships, in order of number. The duty officer to record on the left side and you, on the right side, response time of each ship. Ordered Viktorov. Turn off the flagship fire. Record the time of blackout of each ship standing on the roadstead. For an hour and a half, the head of the maritime forces engaged in checking the vigilance of ships. Having finished checking, he ordered to transmit on the line. Satisfied with the night service Paris Commune, destroyer Lenin, draw the attention of the commander of the destroyer Karl Liebknecht, the barrier January 9 on serious shortcomings.